So it's now been a little more than a week since Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's stunning victory in the 14th Congressional District of New York, and we're seeing a lot of responses from people across the country. Essentially, at this point, everyone knows her name and knows who she is. And when you look at the response from members of the Democratic Party establishment, well, really what they're saying about this, it's interesting, albeit unsurprising, because basically what they're trying to do is desperately downplay her victory. It has nothing to do with the fact that she ran an unapologetically progressive campaign. It has nothing to do with the fact that she campaigned her ass off, and really, she essentially won because of her gender. Now, in fact, this is what one prominent Democratic Party think tank is saying. Now, as The Intercept's Lee Fang reports, Matt Bennett, co-founder of Third Way, a business-friendly Democratic think tank governed by a council of finance industry executives, told Axios that Crowley lost because of his gender and the particular dynamics of the district. Ocasio-Cortez's victory had more to do with the nature of her very blue district than it does with national politics, Bennett said. So in other words, it has nothing to do with her progressive message, it has nothing to do with her flawless campaign, and everything to do with the fact that, well, she ran in this district and she was a woman. Now, why are they trying to downplay her victory here? Well, it's easy. If they can downplay this victory and make it seem as if it's an anomaly, then really, that doesn't have any broader implications for them. It doesn't suggest that the party at large should in fact move to the left and adopt some of these policies that Ocasio-Cortez is talking about. Now, it's one thing if elitist Democratic Party think tanks say things like this, but so long as leaders within the Democratic Party don't see that as the main takeaway, that it was just demographics and, this one was random, then we'll be in good shape. Unfortunately, that's not what they're saying. So DNC Chairman Tom Perez was asked about her victory, and this is what he had to say.
She ran a fantastic campaign, and I think at the end of 2018, when you see remarkable results for Democrats across the country, the role of women leading the charge is going to be a big part of the story of 2018. She was a firebrand. She talked about the issues that mattered most in their districts, and I have great respect for Joe Crowley as well. He was one of the original supporters of Medicare for All among the leadership in the Democratic Party, and she came forward in a remarkable fashion. And another example of the energy we see across America. This is I think this is an exciting time for the movement, and we see this all over the country.
Let's talk about that energy and what it means for the party as a whole, Chairman Perez, because I'm wondering if this victory by Ocasio-Cortez signals to you a frustration with where Democratic leadership is right now, whether this is a sign coming from progressives, coming from some Democrats, that Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer needs to step aside and let in some new blood.
Well, time will tell what happens in that front. But what I think we've seen in elections across the country are candidates who won by focusing on the issues that were keeping their constituents up at night. Alexandria focused on so many issues that were front and center in her very diverse community. A few months back, Connor Lamb was focusing on the right to form a union, the pension security, things of that nature. And he was prescient in the sense that the Supreme Court this morning is making it harder for public sector labor unions to organize. And so what I'm seeing in the candidates that we've been, out there working with and observing is that they're really focused like a laser on how to improve the lives of people. They want to make sure that they're making lives better for folks.
Now, admittedly, what he said wasn't as egregious as what the so-called think tank said, the Third Way think tank that we talked about earlier, but I mean, understand that in talking about her gender here, there's this underlying implication that really she won because of the excitement of women across the country getting into politics. And sure, I'm sure that that's partially a reason why she was victorious, because a lot of us want to see women succeed, of course. Now, to Tom Perez's credit, he did actually suggest that policies were also what excited voters, but it was really interesting because notice how as he talked about her policies, he wouldn't name a single policy from her, and instead of talking about her specific policy proposals, what did he do? He then pivoted to Connor Lamb and discussed his more centrist-friendly policies, like the right to form a union and pension security. So, I mean, there's been both subtle and overt implications that really it wasn't because Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is offering this bold progressive platform, it's because of her gender. And certainly, even though Tom Perez didn't base her entire win off of gender, it certainly was heavily implied that, she was victorious because she was a woman. Now, again, that's problematic because they're saying that really this is an anomaly and it has nothing to do with her policy positions because they don't want to move left. But the reason why Ocasio-Cortez won, as she puts it, is that she says, some folks are saying I won for demographic reasons. First of all, that's false. We won with voters of all kinds. Second, here's my first pair of campaign shoes. I knocked on doors until rainwater came through my soles. Respect the hustle. We won because we outworked the competition. Period. And that's what it comes down to. What Democrats need to take away from this is, one, you've got to adopt bold progressive policy positions, and two, every single campaign they run should be a get out the vote campaign. That's exactly what Alexandria did. She went after non-voters, and that, for Democrats, that's completely unfathomable. It's a really unorthodox way to run your campaign because they just go after people who are more likely to vote. But what Alexandria did is she turned out people who didn't usually vote, and she won. And not only did she just win, she kicked Joe Crowley's ass. So of course the takeaway is that if other Democrats want to be successful in any district, you've got to get out the vote and you've got to actually come with a bold progressive message. Now, Minority Speaker Nancy Pelosi was also asked about Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and really, she was asked whether or not there's any takeaways from this race, if they can learn anything in the broader Democratic Party, and whether or not the party itself should adopt a bold platform like Alexandria's, and her answer pretty much was no.
Listen, to that end, if the Democratic Party is increasingly younger, more female, more diverse, more progressive, should the Democratic House leadership look that way?
Well, I'm female, I'm progressive, and the rest of them. What's your problem? 2 out of 3 ain't bad.
That's the problem. Democratic voters in New York last night seemed to express that problem.
Yeah, they did. They made a choice in one district. So let's not get yourself carried away as an expert on demographics and the rest of that, within the caucus or outside the caucus. We are, again, we have an array of genders, generations, geography, and the rest, opinion in our caucus, and we're very proud of that. The fact that in a very progressive district in New York, it went more progressive well, Joe Crowley is a progressive, but more to the left than Joe Crowley is about that district. It is not to be viewed as something that stands for everything else.
Now, I love how she couldn't even say that she's a progressive with a straight face.
I'm progressive, and the rest of them.
Now, if you care about defeating Republicans, then that clip should be really unsettling. She is downplaying the victory of a 28-year-old who beat a 10-term incumbent who outraised her by, a 17-1 margin? How can you downplay that victory? This was an unprecedented victory here. She took $0 in corporate money. So, I mean, if you're wondering why Democrats were wiped out at all levels of government, if you're wondering why they lost 1,000 seats, more than 1,000 seats in state legislatures across the country, that's why, because of that thinking right there from so-called leaders like Nancy Pelosi. But I mean, it gets worse because this is what she also had to say.
Republicans say that one of the things this defeat shows is that democratic socialism is ascendant in your party. Are they right about that?
No, they're not. It's ascendant in that district, perhaps, but I don't accept any characterization of our party presented by the Republicans. So let me reject that right now. Right, Mr. Conrad? You can join in any time. Our party is a big tent. Our districts are very different one from the other. As I said, I am viewed, and they spend tens of millions of dollars characterizing me or caricaturizing me as this left-wing person, where in my district they call me a corporate pawn because my district is so progressive.
Now, I don't know about you guys, but I can't possibly figure out why anyone would have the audacity to call someone like Nancy Pelosi, of all people, a corporate pawn. I mean, what would possess anyone to lob such a ridiculous insult at her when she's been nothing but an unapologetic principled progressive? I mean, she's not against Medicare for all because she's taking money from the health insurance industry, right? Of course not. It's because she thinks that her plan of a public option, maybe a public option, is just more progressive. I mean, look, that's just embarrassing right there. Not only what she said prior to her calling herself a corporate pawn, but I mean, she's basically acknowledging inadvertently so that she's not representing her district because people in her district are so progressive that they call her a corporate pawn. Well, if they don't like you, Nancy, maybe you should resign. You're clearly hurting the party. I mean, that's objective. That's not me saying that. You just have to look at the facts. Under your leadership, you guys have been wiped out, so maybe it's time to step aside. But she's not stepping aside, and she's doing what we predicted Democrats would do. Downplay her victory, chalk it up to demographics, say socialism isn't ascendant in the party, and say that this is just, this is an anomaly, we shouldn't move left. And even former progressives, like Tammy Duckworth, who knows, or at least did know, how important being progressive was to win elections, decided to downplay Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's victory.
There were obviously a lot of shockwaves in the Democratic Party Tuesday night. When 28-year-old Democratic Socialist Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez defeated the fourth-ranking Democrat in the House, Joe Crowley, is a platform of Medicare for all, federal jobs guarantee, free college tuition. Is this the future of the Democratic Party?
I think it's the future of the party in the Bronx, where she is. I think that we as legislators need to listen to our constituency and get out there. I think what she did was she did the hard work. She pounded the pavement and she was out there talking to every one of her constituents, and I think that was the difference. She turned out her voters and reflected the needs of her district. Are
you concerned at all that your party is going too far to the left to either win in the midterms or win back the White House?
Well, I think that you can't win the White House without the Midwest, and I don't think that you can go too far to the left and still win the Midwest. Coming from a Midwestern state, I think you need to be able to talk to the industrial Midwest. You need to listen to the people there, and in order to win an election nationwide.
I guess I can give Tammy Duckworth some credit here because she's not just chalking up Alexandria's victory to demographics, but still she's promoting this false idea that Democrats can't go too far to the left in the Midwest because, she's from a Midwest state, and if you want to win over the Midwest, then you just can't go too far left. We don't ever talk about how far right Republicans go. Notice how we're only talking about how far left the Democratic Party is going. When the Overton window is shifted so far to the right, yet we only talk about how too left Democrats are, you know that American political discourse is completely messed up right now. But look, I'm not going to respond to Tammy Duckworth because I think that Alexandria had the perfect response. She states, with respect to the senator, strong, clear advocacy for working-class Americans isn't just for the Bronx. Senator Sanders won Michigan, Minnesota, Kansas, Nebraska, Wisconsin, and Indiana. We then lost several of those states in the general. What's the plan to prevent a repeat? They don't have a plan. They think that they can just keep running these centrist candidates and win over members of the Republican Party and moderate voters. But you've learned time and again, or you should have learned anyways, that that's a strategy that doesn't make you electorally successful. Do what she did, get out the vote, go after non-voters, excite your own base, and you might actually win. It doesn't mean that you're going to win 100% of races, but would it improve their chances? Absolutely. Think about this. You never hear Republicans talking about running candidates too far to the right in blue states. I mean, that would be blasphemy to even say something like that, even though the Republican Party has become demonstrably more radicalized over the past 25 years. Yet Democrats, progressive Democrats in particular, who are running on policies supported by a majority of Americans, well, they get chastised by members of their own party for being too progressive when Republicans, they don't even question it. They run far right-wingers in blue states. I mean, look at the policies. Americans, by and large, are progressive. And look, even if Democrats are really worried about losing and going too far left and they really want to play it safe, here's a couple of policies that are polling nearly at 60%, if not more than 60%. Medicare for all, legalizing marijuana, a federal jobs guarantee, tuition-free public colleges and universities. Just go with those 4 policies that have almost 60%, if not more, and you'll win. You could even play it safe that way and still be pretty progressive, but they don't want to do that. They're cowards. And why? Well, of course, it's because their donors don't want them to become more progressive. So, I mean, so long as the Overton window is so far to the right in this country, don't you dare talk to me about someone being too far left, Tammy Duckworth, or Tom Perez, or Nancy Pelosi. Every single election should be a get out the vote campaign, and even if they want to downplay what she did, which was amazing, and chalk it up to, we can't look too much into this. This is just a one-off. She's only 28. We shouldn't learn too much from her because she's just a youngin'. She's naive. No, learn from her, and maybe you might actually win. But of course, Democrats, they don't really seem like, they're that interested in winning, which is absurd. So, look, if you don't learn any lessons from Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, then I don't know what to say. You've just got to be kicked out of office. You are not someone who should be a leader at this time if you can't take away anything you need to change from this very important race.
Support this podcast by becoming a patron at patreon.com/Humanist Report.